On the visual side of things, the Sea of Sameness kind of describes how the design landscape has become very one note. Brands have muted colors, pastel gradients, flat, cartoonish illustrations, minimalist logos, and really uninteresting typefaces. If you want to know what I'm talking about, just look up corporate illustrations on Google Images. Everyone seems to be using the same visual systems to create this sort of modern looking brand, which makes it really difficult to distinguish between them. It was useful at a time and kind of necessary for design to kind of shift in this direction for utility when we started using smaller and smaller displays, mobile browsers, and apps. But we're kind of left with this status quo, which is just frankly boring. So our challenge is kind of how do we break through this monotony to create compelling and engaging brand experiences. So on the visual side of things, that's kind of where the Sea of Sameness shows up.
Yeah, and on the copy side, I feel like the Sea of Sameness is sort of the same messaging over and over from a lot of B2B tech companies. You know, it's faster, it's better, it's cheaper. The similar sort of jargon, using this type of jargon feels safe and easy, so people tend to default to it. And even you can notice like sort of the same structure and headlines, which of course, as a copywriter, we've all done it, you know, maybe something that's like fast, period, you know, good, period, cheap, period. And everyone's like, ooh, that looks great. But it's sort of after you see so many websites and so many, you know, pieces of marketing material, so many social posts, you're like, everyone's sort of saying the same thing. There's a significant lack of sort of differentiation and an actual like connection to industry problems or what's actually going on in the industry today. Sort of just like falling back on this jargon and falling back on, you know, the idea of like it's faster than the way you're doing it. It's better in some small way. That's sort of not helping companies like stand out from the crowd and thinking about like what their customer actually wants to know versus like falling back on the messaging that everybody in their industry is already using. I think there's so many different ways to do it. I think, first of all, not being afraid to be a little bit tastefully funny or, you know, kind of, say something that's a little bit outside of the norm or a little bit bolder. There definitely is a place for humor in developer marketing that Cam and I have found with our work that people do really respond to it and they find it really interesting and engaging when a brand raises their hand and like tries to say something funny, tastefully, of course. You know, making an inside industry joke or using a meme can actually be really effective and can be a way to stand your brand out.
Yeah, I think there's a certain fear of taking risks from a visual perspective and not wanting to alienate your audience and make it uncomfortable for them or distracting. But I think that we've kind of gone a little bit too far into the safety category to where everyone kind of like looks the same. So if everyone has access to kind of like web tools, everyone can make a website these days. It's, you know, very accessible to create brand experiences that it ever has been before. You know, tools like Canva or other sort of like design software is just readily available. And so I think that there's a fear of not like of standing out and just kind of going with what everyone else has done. But that pendulum kind of is starting to swing the other way, where we're starting to see a little bit more bold choices in terms of color and typeface and brand experiences that kind of break through that noise. And this is a pattern that, you know, we've seen in design and fashion throughout the years. And it's just kind of like a cycle that continues. And we're kind of reaching the end where everyone's a little bit fed up with how boring everything has gotten. So eventually someone will kind of break through with a new standard, and then eventually everyone will copy that, and then it's on and so forth. So, but I think today brands can start not looking at what everyone else is doing, looking outside of the tech industry, looking outside of B2B marketing at what's going on in music, what's going on in fashion, what's going on in film, looking at other areas outside of your direct competitor landscape is incredibly useful. And I think that people tend not to do that just out of that fear of uncomfortability or playing it safe all the time. I think what's important about developers or any tech savvy audience is that they do their own research. They don't need to be sort of like guided towards a solution. You can have the best marketing campaign, the sleekest website, and the most punchy headlines, but at the end of the day, developers are going to do their own diligence. So guiding that process and making that research process as accessible and as easy as possible without being distracting is good. But from a brand perspective, being able to differentiate yourself from product A to product B, they're going to be looking at you, but they're also going to be looking at 5 or 6 other people. So being able to stand out in that way that is visually interesting, but also providing an experience that doesn't prevent them from conducting their own research, getting the information, asking the questions, interacting on forums with other developers and community members, getting the answers that they need to make decisions, whether or not they're going to use your product or start to integrate your software in some capacity.
Yeah, definitely. Just thinking about this through the lens of content, I think a lot of developers are seeking like a more authentic connection. I know thought leadership, quote unquote, has been kind of a big sort of buzzy word for at least the last decade, but I think there is definitely a place for something like thought leadership in companies' marketing approach, in terms of like who at your company might have something interesting to say that developers would want to hear from. Like, who is someone that other employees listen to or go to for advice, who can talk to your product in like a very natural, like conversational way to sort of take that marketing sheen off of it. Because I think at the end of the day, like everybody is just talking to each other and saying like, what do you like to use? Like, what has helped make your everyday life easier? And just having someone out there who is like a representative of your company on social media, whether that's like LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever your audience is hanging out, to be authentically saying like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about our industry, not even related to the product, not even thinking about marketing or promoting anything. Hey, this is what I'm thinking about what's happening in the industry, or like, I went to this event, this is what I liked and didn't like, here's my insight. And then just kind of like naturally that person becoming more of a leader in their industry and thinking about them as like a representative. And then, you know, people are going to naturally kind of think about where they're working and what they're doing, what they're interested in, and sort of like there's more of an opportunity for organic growth there, instead of, you know, the usual like content marketing, like 4 top ways to improve your IT security. At this point, we've all read that. It feels a little bit more authentic when it's coming from an actual human being with like actual insight, especially into something that's current and topical and relevant to the audience.
It's less about what you say and where you say it. You know, you're not going to convince a bunch of tech savvy and developer audiences on your website. You need to show up where the developers are actually having these conversations and show up in an authentic way. I think developers are kind of allergic to marketing and being sold to, and they like to hear from other developers, which I think is a mistake that a lot of developer marketing programs make, is they try to make this stance as being the authority on their own products or being the authority on why developers should use their products or their software solutions. But developers are the authority on whether or not it's going to be a viable solution. So hearing from other developers so that they can vet it and instill that confidence is super crucial. Showing up where the developers are already interacting with each other in those spaces is a huge part of that.